I was told to be high energy as you all are digesting your food. It is insane. I was going to actually just ask people what they thought I should talk about and get, but anyway, I'll talk about entrepreneurship being insane. I do think it's insane. Raise your hand if you are an entrepreneur out here thinking you're going to build a company. All right, so you are all insane. This is a terribly, terribly bad idea. And the thing about it is I live in a universe that only exists because sometimes it works, right? I think that actually, to a certain degree, it's not actually entrepreneurship is insane. I think that entrepreneurship is magic, right? It's magic. When it works, you're just like, holy cow, how did they do that? And it looks so easy. It's like, oh my God, the thing disappeared and then reappeared. It was completely stunning. And yet the reality is that there was an immense amount of planning, there was an immense amount of opportunity, immense amount of thinking that went into it in order to make it seem like it was seamless and perfect and beautiful. And meanwhile, the vast majority of magicians suck. Have you ever seen bad magicians? They're the worst, right? You go, oh yeah, I saw you put the thing in your sleeve or whatever. You suck. So I think that entrepreneurship is actually that. I think it's magic. I think that it's stunning to me that it ever works. And so I wanted to just talk about the very outset of this process, right? Why is it that entrepreneurship is so hard? And the reason that it's so hard is because no one in their right mind would do it, all right? And the first reason that no one in their right mind would do it is that everything we are taught from our childhood until we get to college till we get through high school, etc., tells us to not do this crazy thing, which is to create our own existence, to create our own job, right? So all of you are marching through, and there is no one in college that says, like, we're going to recruit you to be an entrepreneur. There are recruiters for Procter & Gamble. There's a recruiter for an accounting firm. There are recruiters for bankers. There are all these recruiters that are there telling you what job you could have, and everything, and you instead are going to say, like, nah, I know that you all have done this before and you've created these amazing jobs and that seems super safe. And by the way, you're going to pay me a bunch of money and you're going to feed me lunch and all those things. But I'd rather come up with my own idea and I'm going to start my own company and I'm going to control my own destiny, right? So step one is that you have to literally be insane. You have to ignore everything you've been taught in order to pursue this dream that is extraordinarily unlikely, right? Extraordinarily unlikely that you'll be successful, extraordinarily unlikely that you'll manage to create this thing and pursue it, etc. And then the biggest impediment, I think, ultimately to entrepreneurship is your mother. Your mother says, what the fuck are you talking about? Go to Procter & Gamble. Do not start your own company. Go, oh, Mom, I want to start my own company. She goes, no. You will not do that. I just paid for college. I managed to get you through high school by the skin of your teeth. Get a job. I would rather you be the night manager anywhere than create your own job. That's a terrible idea. So we all have to first get past our mother telling us that this is a completely stupid thing to do, right? And I had this exact reaction, right? I used to be an attorney. I was a litigator in New York, and I was working at this big, giant law firm. I decided that it was not the job I wanted. And so I started talking to a set of people about what interesting things I might do instead. And a buddy of mine was running product for Windows at Microsoft. And he said, David, why don't you talk to me and maybe you could come here and you could be a product guy at Microsoft, whatever. And I was a lawyer. I was very unhappy. And I said, oh, I can't do that because my mom would be mad. I was like 30 and I still wouldn't do it because my mom would be mad. By the way, that dude is vice president of something or other and has a boat. Whatever. It worked out fine, but it was a bad place. Don't listen to your mother. All right. So So next thing, so if you have managed that Herculean task, which is to say like, oh yeah, I know this is a bad idea, Mom, but I'm still gonna do it. I have no choice, I'm gonna do it. Okay, what do you have to do next? You have to come up with an idea, right? You have to, this is actually, in many ways, the hardest part of entrepreneurship. It's very easy to say, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. We have, in fact, a whole bunch of pop culture now that says like, oh, entrepreneurship, it's amazing. All you have to do is come up with an idea and then you can build this amazing thing. Here's the only problem. Ideas are super hard, right? Those of you who are starting companies, you say, okay, that's it. I'm going to start a company. Think, David. You just sit down and go like, what? Pencils, nope, pencils have been done. What? I want tables, yep, nope, those are good. Sandwiches, done, sandwiches are good. Go through your day. The toilet's covered, this is a hard thing. And it turns out that finding that idea is usually about life experience, right? Finding the idea, Paul Graham sort of, famously from Y Combinator said that entrepreneurs should pursue things that they know. You should fix problems that you know, right? But, imagine you're coming out of elementary school or whatever and you're ready to be an entrepreneur. What do you know? You don't know recess. There are not a lot of companies coming out of recess. So now you got through high school. What do you know? Tutoring. That's been covered. And so the truth is, even as we get out of college, as we go through our first jobs or whatever, the capacity to come up with that great idea is actually really hard. It takes a certain skill, and it takes a skill that very few people have and that don't necessarily correlate with being a great entrepreneur, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great entrepreneur. If you're creative, creativity may be a great opportunity, but coming up with that initial idea is a very tricky thing. I was on a trip in England with a Google exec, and she said that she was sick of Silicon Valley. And why are you sick of Silicon Valley? She said, I'm sick of Silicon Valley because every company is just solving the problems that your mom used to do. She was like, they bring you your food, and they do your dry cleaning, and they whatever, It was like, all right, fair enough. Again, what are the ideas? Like, oh man, it's so hard to drive to the dry cleaner, drop it off, there are multiple companies right now that will drive to your car to fill it with gas. How hard is that? You're driving along, I'm running out of gas. Gas station! Pull over, you fill it up. That's not, no offense if any of you are working on that. I'm sure. I was pitched on that idea, by the way, and the argument was that it was better for the environment. It's better for the environment to bring my gas to my car? How could that be? That just seems, oh no, think of all the time you drive around getting gas. No, just pull over, get the gas. All right, so you have to come up with an idea. So here's the thing. This is the other thing that actually, in this instance, I do think that these two characteristics are extraordinarily valuable for an entrepreneur, and they're extraordinarily valuable when you're trying to come up with an idea. And they are empathy and listening, right? It turns out that it's actually very hard to be empathetic, to put yourself in the space, in the body, in the mind of other people. But if you can do that, then you might see some ideas that aren't simply the problems you have. And then listen to the universe around you. I had this amazing professor friend when I was going through college, and everywhere he went, he asked questions. And in some regards, it was completely annoying because he'd ask just like the guy who would come and deliver the soup. He'd be like, how'd you get these potatoes so creamy or whatever? Be like, really? Like, first of all, the waiter doesn't know. He didn't make the fucking creamed soup. He just delivered it to you. But he was always asking because he was always like, oh, I want to know. How much gas mileage, what's the gas mileage that limousine gets or whatever? If you're that person, then you're listening, you're seeing the universe. I'm sure many of you have heard the story of how Uber got started. Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp were in Paris. It turns out, those of you who have not experienced the fun of Paris taxis, you can only get a taxi at the place where the taxi picks you up. But how do you know where that is? I don't know. I'm not from Paris. So you sit on the corner, you're like, taxi, and they drive by, you're like, go to the place. I don't have a place. I don't know what the place is. So Travis and Garrett experienced this while at the Loeb conference, and it annoyed them. And while they were in Paris, they had rented this apartment. There were a group of them, Garrett and Travis and Gary Vaynerchuk, and there were just a group of folks, and they called it the Jam Pad, and they would hang out all night coming up with ideas. This was their idea of fun, which is weird. In this instance, it was, worth billions, so that's convenient. But this is what they did. They sat around and they came up with ideas. So first, you convince your mom you're going to do it. You have to come up with an idea. So next thing is, it's not enough to come up with an idea. You actually have to come up with a good idea. There are lots of bad ideas, but good ideas are really hard. I have to say that good ideas aren't always obvious, right? So here's a good idea. Why don't I rent my couch out to some dude I don't know? That's a terrible idea. I've got an idea. What if I just text all my friends that I'm eating an ice cream cone? Yeah, that's awesome. Here's it. I have all this broken crap in my garage. Let me sell it online. So not only did one giant company come out of that, eBay, but then Craigslist was like, you're doing a terrible job of selling your broken crap. And so then Craigslist came along and built a giant company. And then Nextdoor came along and said, we'll help you give away your broken shit. It's like, yes, this is a genius idea. And yet all of these companies are monumentally large companies. So the tricky part is distinguishing a good idea from a bad idea, right? Oftentimes the ideas that seem like they're good ideas are not good ideas, they're bad ideas. And the ideas that seem like bad ideas are in fact good ideas. Now the hard part is that sometimes bad ideas are bad ideas. 5 minutes left? That's not even conceivable. I have like 7 more pages. So here's the thing about the venture business. Every day I sit around and people pitch ideas. They say, oh, that's a good idea, that's a bad idea, that's a bad idea, that's a good idea. There's a new podcast out called Masters of Scale, and it's got Reid Hoffman. It's super fun. It's a fun thing. And Reid was just talking about this. He said, and this is something venture capitalists know for sure, is that when you bring in some company and everybody likes it, you don't fund that thing. Just don't. Oh, everybody thinks it's a good idea? Of course everybody thinks it's a good idea. And everybody else thinks it's a good idea, and everybody else came up with that idea. The ideas that are amazing are the ideas that some people think are really stupid, like I rent my couch, right? Those ideas are the ones that have the capacity to be differentiated. So why is it? So not only do you have to come up with a good idea, but you have to come up with a unique idea. So sometimes a unique idea is like, hey, I could rent my couch. That's a great idea. Sometimes a unique idea is, hey, what if I drove the gas to my car? Sorry, whoever's company that is, but seriously, like that's unique. Sometimes unique is sort of like, David is a unique looking guy. Sometimes unique is not so great. Sometimes unique is amazing. So you got to come up with a unique idea. And I'll tell you, this is one of the challenges you have as an entrepreneur, experiencing the universe, you've lived your life, you're in the world, and you come up with an idea, you're like, oh my God, here's the idea. What if X, Y, and Z? What if someone else parked my car? Whatever. You're like, that'd be amazing. Meanwhile, somewhere next door, some person was like, I got an idea. Someone should park my car. And they're like, oh, that's an amazing idea. And they tell all their friends, and their friends are like, that's a great idea. And they start a company. One day, I was in a meeting, and I was meeting with a company. I thought, oh, that's a kind of an interesting idea. Had the thing. And then as I was leaving, my partner said, hey, David, you want to hear this business? It's a friend, whatever. And I said, okay, that's great. And I went in the next meeting, and it was the exact same idea. Not a little different. It was like, it could have been a carbon copy of the pitch. I felt really badly. It was like, it was a good idea. It simply wasn't a unique idea. All right, what else do you need? You need an idea. You need a good idea. You need a unique idea. You need a big idea. Turns out that Little ideas do not make big and interesting companies. They can make fine companies, don't get me wrong. You're more than welcome. You know, whoever came up with, what are those dumb fruit bouquets or whatever, you know, like, turns out that somebody made a bunch of money because, oh, I'd love a fruit bouquet. That's delicious. Shut up. That's not a big idea. That's like a fine idea, whatever. Silicon Valley has an incredible bigotry. We want things to be giant ideas. And so we fund companies because we think they're going to be big and interesting. So I funded this company called Blippy. Does anyone remember Blippy? Blippy was Twitter for your credit card. You could you put your credit card online, and then every time you bought something on that credit card, you go to blippy.com/David Hornik, and it would say, David spent $47 on an edible arrangement. That's what it was called, on an edible arrangement. And you're like, whoa, David, that was delicious. And 10,000 people are like, oh my God, I totally have to tell people everything I buy. That would be amazing. People would love to know that. And you know, another 15,000 people are like, I would love to know what David's buying. Oh, edible arrangement, that's amazing. And then that was it. Those 25,000 people were like, what about all of you? And everybody else was like, no, that is a stupid idea. Nobody needs to know what I buy. Nobody should know what I buy. And what seemed to me like a really great idea, to the tune of millions of dollars that I invested in this company, turned out to be a bad idea. Not because it wasn't awesome, but because it didn't scale. It wasn't a giant idea. It needed to be a giant idea. Now, the irony of this, by the way, is that I'm pretty sure Venmo is that now, right? Isn't Venmo like, dude, bought an edible arrangement? Like, oh, that was Blippy. You stole that shit from me. So it needs to be a big idea. And it needs to stay a big idea. Sequoia Capital just invested $50 million in House Party. House Party had gotten up to 2 million users. People were excited. First, there was Meerkat. And Meerkat looked like it was going to be amazing. And then Meerkat turned out to be not as amazing. And so then they shifted and they became House Party. And then House Party looked like it was going to be amazing, 2 million users. And Sequoia put in $50 million. And it looks like it's not going to be amazing. It looks like it went to 2 million users and it's going to fall away. And it felt a little bit like the Yik Yak that Sequoia put $50 million in. It was going to be huge and amazing. And it just got sold for $1 million because it turned out it wasn't amazing. And it sort of feels like this messaging platform that they had. They funded, I think they put $62 million in this stupid messaging platform where you could just like send information to each other. And I forget what the numbers are like. They had 20 billion messages sent, and then they sold it to Facebook for $30 billion. So that one was good. WhatsApp was good. So if it's WhatsApp, good. If it's Meerkat, not as good. So this is why it's hard. It has to be a big and interesting and successful idea. And here's the last piece, because I'm going to run out of time. And this one's impossible. This is impossible. When I started in the venture business, I've been now a venture capitalist for 17 years. And when I started, every time someone would pitch, you'd say to them, why wouldn't Microsoft do that? And they'd say, well, Microsoft is busy and it takes a bunch of resources and whatever else. And it turned out, actually, for that 10 years, Microsoft never did any of those things. They just never did. And then Google came around, and then you'd say, like, oh, that's a good idea, but why wouldn't Google do that? And say, well, they're focused on search and they're focused on that, and they would never do it. And so for their 10 years, they never did any of that. And then now you say, like, oh, well, why wouldn't Facebook do that? And the answer is, oh, Facebook wouldn't do that. They don't have time or whatever. Unless, of course, you're Snapchat, and then they'll totally copy the shit out of it. And they'll do it, and they'll do it better, and they'll have more users, and they'll suck all the value out of the thing you built with your hard-built sweat and tears. I was just, the AWS just had their conference, what's called reInvent. So I also invest in enterprise companies. So AWS just had reInvent. Now AWS is amazing, right? You have these ideas where you can implement them really quickly because AWS has these awesome resources. And so all these engineers are using AWS and they're having the same experience. They're coming to it and they're going, oh, if only you could do this with Elasticsearch. If only you could do this on such and such platform, whatever. And so now all of these enterprise companies are coming out solving problems on AWS. And so every one of us, I can assure you, had this same conversation, which is, oh man, why wouldn't Amazon do that? Like, why wouldn't Amazon do that? And we've had the same answer, right? The same answer is like, oh, Amazon's busy and they don't have the, they're resource constrained and all those things, right? At reInvent, Amazon announced 200 new features on AWS, and I suspect 172 startups died that day. Died a sad and weeping death of like, you weren't supposed to do this. You were supposed to be resource constrained. Nope, they have got a lot of people, and they're moving fast, and they're building features that are unbelievable. And so it's got to be a great idea. It's got to be a big idea. It's got to be it has to be a unique idea. It has to be an idea that the big guys are not chasing. And then, if all of that happens, then all you have to do is, recruit a team, raise money, you got to grow your users, you got to come up with a business model, you got to sell some product, you got to raise more money, then you can recruit more team, you can grow your users some more, you can sell more product, you can grow, you can grow, you can grow, you can grow, and then if you're super, super lucky, someone might buy you or you might go public. This is why it's magic. Like, that's an impossible task. It's an impossible task, and I have nothing but monumental respect for all of you sitting out there who wake up and say and convince their mom that this is a good idea, and then power through and do the hard work and create awesomeness. So thank you for that, and keep up the good work.